Later on in this service, we're going to gather at this table. We're going to bless bread and wine, and we're going to share it. I think it's worth considering when we come to this altar, when you approach the altar, when you got up this morning and got ready and thought about coming to this altar, what is it that we are coming for? What do we desire to receive at the altar? It's true that you're going to get some bread. We call it bread. It's really more like a cracker. But I doubt that you're coming to the altar because you're physically hungry, right? I hope not. Communion wafers are notoriously devoid of flavor. And also, I'm only going to give you this tiny little wafer. It's not going to sate your hunger. It's also true that there will be wine available here, but I doubt that you're coming forward because you're thirsty. Again, the wine served at communion is chosen more for its durability than its taste. And again, there's not much there in the cup. If you come to the altar thirsty, I think you will leave thirsty. It's also true that some wonderful and amazing people will be up at the altar. Myself, your local acolyte, and your local seminarian, but I don't think you're coming up to hang out with us or chat with us. Indeed, the only thing I say to you will be a formula that I say to everyone who comes forward. I don't think you're going to come to the altar because you're hungry or thirsty or because you just want to hang out with people in strange-looking robes. Something else, I imagine, is drawing you to this altar. And while there are many things that might bring us here, many desires that might bring us here, my guess is that for many of us, we would say that here at this altar, in communion, what we're desiring is God. Somehow a taste of God, a moment with God, communion with God. Desiring God is a strange kind of desire, though, if we pause for a moment and consider it. Because to desire God is to desire a whole bunch of things all at once. It's not a simple desire like hunger or thirst. It's even much more complex than the desire for fellowship. If we desire God, we desire the one who created us, our source, but also the one who sustains us in existence moment to moment. If we desire God, we desire the one who righteously judges us, the one who calls us to live well, to live kindly, to live with love and honesty and integrity. If we desire God, we desire the one who loves us and who gives our existence meaning simply by valuing us infinitely. In desiring God, we desire our beginning, but also our end, our source, and also the one who guarantees the meaning of our existence. We desire all of that at once. This desire for God gets even stranger, more confusing, more mysterious when we consider that we desire God, but we can't see God. We desire God, but we can't touch or hold God. Indeed, we find that we can't really imagine or picture or even comprehend this God that we're seeking. And yet, if you're here this morning, something tells me that in some way and to some extent, you would probably agree that you desire God. How strange, how odd to desire something that we can't quite name or know or picture. To desire God ultimately means we desire something that's bigger than us. We desire something that we can't hold on to. We desire something that utterly transcends our being. It's a strange desire. It can be a scary desire. It can also, though, be an intoxicating desire. In desiring God, we know we're being drawn to something true and wonderful and beautiful, even if also confusing and a bit frightening. Now, I think the Apostle Paul knew all about this desire for God. Paul's desire for God took him in many different directions in life and ultimately got him in a whole lot of trouble. In his first letter to the Thessalonians, in the passage we have today, I think Paul is referring to our desire for God, although he doesn't use that word. Indeed, today, Paul doesn't really refer to our desire for God, but rather the culmination and the fulfillment of that desire. Our reading on page 7. Paul is trying to teach the church at Thessaloniki all about what it means to desire God and to have that desire fulfilled. He uses this strange poetic imagery of being drawn up in the air. I don't want us to get caught on an overly literal reading of that. But what Paul is talking about is that in the end of things, in the culmination of things, God comes for us. The one that we desire so strangely, the one that we desire who's so mysterious, the one that we desire even as we don't quite know what we're desiring, comes for us. We find our desire fulfilled and sated. This is what it means to talk about the second coming, or the parousia, the arrival of God in our world. God will choose again to come among us, and that desire will be fulfilled. It's worth pointing out, I think, that for Paul, that's what belief is all about. Faith and belief are not, for Paul, dry and abstract terms. They're concrete, rich terms. To believe in God, to have faith in God, means more than anything to desire God. Notice that in our reading today, right, Paul is sort of referring to this, right? What's the difference between the believer and the unbeliever, according to Paul? What's the difference between believing and not believing, right? Does Paul say that believers are morally superior to unbelievers? No. Does he say that believers will be rewarded and unbelievers will be punished? No. These are common things that many Christians think about the difference between belief and unbelief, but that's not what Paul says. What Paul says today simply is to believe is to have hope. That's the difference. A hope that our desire for God will not be frustrated. The hope that our desire for God will be fulfilled. And this is what we live in. Belief and faith, hope, is simply the belief, the faith, the hope that our desire for this one that transcends us, the one who is not seen but sort of felt, that this desire will be fulfilled, that it can be sated. Christian hope, Christian faith boils down to desire. And so I hope that as we approach the altar today together, we approach it not out of hunger or thirst or fellowship, or at least not out of the regular physical hunger and thirst and that desire for fellowship. Because you might find those desires a bit frustrated in your time at the altar, but rather that together at this altar, we'll seek that desire that alone points us to our true home, to our true identity, to our true fulfillment, that we come to this altar desiring God, even if we're not sure what that means or what that looks like or how it might be fulfilled. Let's identify that desire for God within ourselves, and let's simply allow that desire to then guide us today, tomorrow, and in the weeks and months to come. My friends, may it be so. Amen.